Hi, this is Interviewing Basics. Our objective here for the next, say, 45 minutes is to cover the best practices for before, during, and after the job interview, placing a particular emphasis on the face-to-face interview. You can check out our pre-recorded webinar, The Basics of Phone and Virtual Interviewing, on our YouTube channel for a breakdown on those types. Now, our goal by the end of this session is for you to be able to execute interview best practices when you're being considered for a position at your target organization. So not just any organization, but a target organization, one that is calling for who you are, your forward trajectory. My name is Brendan Schneider, and here's what we'll be covering. First off, we'll talk about scheduling the interview with strategy. Then we'll talk salary and company research, accomplishment statements, which are the backbone of job search, interview questions to be prepared for, and the components of a thank you email. So here we are before the interview. So you get that call and they want to meet with you. Your first question should be how long you should allot in your schedule for the interview and who you'll be meeting with. You're looking for names and job titles. You want this information for a few reasons. First, in case you get another interview or appointment in the meantime, you can schedule accordingly. Next, if you know the names and the positions that those folks have, you can research them beforehand and begin to question whether or not you can work with them on a daily basis. Begin to determine if there's a match between who you are and who the organization hires. And that is the most important word with job search right there, match. We need to indicate how we are a match, and we're looking to see if they are a match to who we are as job seekers. So copy that word down somewhere, match. I also suggest that if you haven't already started following the organization on LinkedIn, now's the time. Research, 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 research. Know as much about the position and the organization as possible before your interview. So check out these websites here. Each of these are invaluable. Beginning top left, LinkedIn. All business sectors are on LinkedIn right now. Now, maybe the shoemaker down the street isn't on LinkedIn, but I do wonder how much business that shoemaker would have if they were on LinkedIn. LinkedIn isn't only important for networking, but you can find out about organizations. Oftentimes, you can find out about who was hired at an organization, right? And what their background is like. So definitely be on LinkedIn and be researching on LinkedIn as well. Glassdoor.com, just like LinkedIn, you do have to create a login, and unlike LinkedIn, every year you have to submit a review. It could be a review of an interview, it could be a review of a salary, it can be a review of an organization in general. I like that there are reviews of organizations on Glassdoor because as a job seeker, you can then take a look at what other people have said about that organization. Oftentimes there are interview questions that are listed on Glassdoor. So what better way to prepare for the interview than to see the other questions that people have fielded? So definitely check out Glassdoor. You have to sign in with either your Google or Apple account, but it's well worth it. Glassdoor, also good for salary, and we're going to get into salary in just a little bit. CareerBliss.com. If I can't find an organization on Glassdoor, I go over to CareerBliss. They have a lot of the same information that Glassdoor has. The organization's mission statement, more information about the organization, but definitely check out Career Bliss or use Career Bliss as a research tool. FairyGodBoss.com, that is a website. It's designed for female job seekers. I identify as male, but I like checking out FairyGodBoss.com because I like to see as many different perspectives as possible. There's a great advice column on there for job seekers and a great way of researching companies and job search. People laugh when I suggest Yelp, but hey, people have Yelped museums, they've Yelped restaurants. Maybe somewhere along the line has Yelped the organization that you're interviewing at. So you want to find out more and more about that organization. Yelp is another place. Jobinterviewquestions.com. I'm so delighted that there's a website like this. You can go onto jobinterviewquestions.com and you can put in a particular position that you're applying to, and it's going to generate not only questions but also topics that are likely to come up during that job interview. So what better way to prepare? What better way to have a batting practice, if you will, prior to that job interview? Right hand side of the screen right now, salary research. I want to point out too that these columns here, they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, you can find out salary information on Glassdoor, and you can certainly find out company research in a roundabout way through On It Online or through salary.com. I just needed a way to differentiate between the two. But onetonline.org, one of three online presences of the U.S. Department of Labor. You can put in, let's go with medical assistant again. You can put in medical assistant in the upper right-hand corner in their occupation keyword search, and it's going to generate a summary report of that position, showing all of the knowledge, skills, and abilities that one would need to perform that position at an average level. If you continue to scroll down, not only will you see trends and job openings for that position, but you'll also see salary ranges. Salary is often dictated by the area of the country that we're in. So a medical assistant in the Boston area would be paid differently than, say, in the Kansas City area or in the San Diego area. So you can put in your zip code or the zip code of the vacancy, and you can find out the salary ranges. You want to go into that interview armed with salary ranges. More on salary in just a little bit, but you can find that information out on onetonline.org. Theladders.com, they've changed their MO in the past few years. It's now for higher salaries, 80,000 and above per year, mostly six-figure salary. If you're looking for that type of position, theladders.com should be a destination on your road to the next position. Fantastic for salaries. Along with salary.com and payscale.com, I regard these as sort of the granddaddies of internet research online, and with good reason. You don't need to create a login for Payscale. You don't need to create a login for salary.com to get the full breadth of that site. But what do we have here? We have 10 websites. Let's say you spent just 5 minutes on each of these. Imagine the wealth of data that you'd have after 50 minutes of research. Now, another thing we should keep in mind, if the interview is in person, map out the route to the interview the day before. Know the traffic, parking, where to find the nearest restroom for a mirror to look presentable so you can walk in and be ready and on time. If your interview is virtual, make sure your device is charged and the software is installed ahead of time so you can join the meeting on time. I always recommend for virtual interviews to be logging on a few minutes before the interview time. Interviews are a way of an organization to see what you'd be like during a meeting, right? So what better way to show what you'd be like for a virtual meeting than to be logging on a little earlier. Now, speaking of virtual, as a job seeker, it's now a necessity to talk about how you can work remotely, that you're familiar with virtual technology like Zoom or what I'm using here, WebEx, and that you can budget your time efficiently. So be prepared to answer questions about that. This is now the state of the world. As I mentioned earlier, we have a webinar entitled The Basics of Phone and Virtual Interviewing that gets into the details of the virtual interview itself. Like this session, we have that webinar available pre-recorded on our YouTube channel. You can also check out our calendar on our website and sign up for it when we run it again. And in a little bit, I'll let you know how you can navigate to our site for both our calendar and our YouTube channel. But for now, I want to delve into specifics. Specifics. You're perfecting your delivery for the interview. See, interviewers want to know how you specifically match. There's that word again, right? Match. It's going to pop up over and over and over again. If you walk into an interview saying, I've got good attention to detail, I'm an active listener, so what? And so did everyone who's been interviewing for that target position. It's the story, your story, that sets you apart from the pack. Employers want problem solvers. Share with them how you solve problems in past positions and how solving those problems parallel with how you're going to solve theirs. And we do that through accomplishment statements. So here's how these break down. Sometimes CAR is used, sometimes STAR is used. Same idea here with PAR. How this works is you think of a previous position that you've had. Next, think of an issue from that past position that parallels what you'll be working on in this new role. There it is again, match, right? And you break down the accomplishment with what we see here on screen. P for the problem that presented itself. A for the action that you and or your team took to solve that problem, and R for the result of your action, preferably in quantifiable form. So let's take a look at an example here. While at Norcom, I noticed that my marketing department didn't know what initiatives the editorial department was undertaking. I consulted with some other managers, and they reported a siloing in their departments as well. At my suggestion, Norcom implemented a weekly meeting with all 9 department heads to discuss goals, updates, and challenges. This information was then shared at each individual department meeting, which in turn increased productivity across all departments by 20%. So the problem here, if we're looking at that PAR structure, the problem was that departments were siloed and those walls needed to be broken down for better communication. What was the action? Well, weekly meetings with all 9 department heads for information sharing. And what was the result? Increased productivity across all departments by 20%. And this could be roughly 20% too. That doesn't have to be specific. You can say roughly 20%. You can say in the ballpark of, say, 15 to 25%. But that idea, the ideal here really is to have a quantifiable result on the end. So I want to zero in on that for a second here. This quantifiable result with this accomplishment, did you increase productivity and sales? Did you decrease costs? Did you increase revenue? Did you introduce or streamline a policy? Excellent. Now, by how much? Now, here, you don't have to give an exact number. You can guesstimate. You can use ballpark figures. Like I said earlier, X to Y, it was someplace in the neighborhood of X. I mean, this is especially useful if you signed a non-disclosure agreement because you'd be giving a range. Now, jobinterviewquestions.com states that we need to have around 5 accomplishment statements on hand for the interview. And this is because they're the best way to answer interview questions. We're going to cover that in a few minutes. But be sure to practice accomplishment statements. Practice, practice, practice. Practice before the interview. Practice getting the words out of your mouth. Use a mirror. Practice with someone. You can use your cell phone too to practice when you walk around in public. Turn on the camera of your computer and practice that way. You can use your cell phone to walk around in public. I mean, nobody has to know that anybody is on the other end, and then you'd get used to the idea of people passing you as you're delivering your accomplishment statements. Now, last 2 items here before the interview. Be walking in somewhere around 10 to 15 minutes ahead of time. If it's virtual, be logging in about 5 minutes before. Any earlier, and you're taking the interviewers away from their job. Any later, they may start to wonder how punctual you are. Next, as you're sitting there in reception, think of something that inspires you. That historical figure, the speech, those song lyrics, or whatever it is. Because if we're happy, it's nearly impossible to be nervous. Inspiration pushes the nerves away. And when we're inspired, this happens. And that is one of the most important things you can bring to an interview: a smile. The job search can be stressful, it can be dire. But if the target position of your job search isn't making you happy, you have to find a new job search because life is too short. And you've worked too hard to not go after something that makes you smile. All right, part 2 now, during the interview. Yes, be ready for the questions. We have to be ready for those questions. Again, research. There are 2 great web pages out there. You'll recognize the second URL here from earlier in the presentation. Jobinterviewquestions.com is great for reviewing questions and answers for specific business sectors, specific roles. But that first one is a fantastic listing of nearly 24 common interview questions, what the questions are looking to uncover about you as a candidate, and how to best answer them. As an applicant, as an interviewee, be ready for those questions. So let's look into a few that you're going to get. Tell me about yourself. Not a question, but they're looking for an answer that matches who they're looking for in an employee. I mean, the answer to this is never, well, I'm a tourist, I love cat videos and men who aren't afraid to cry. No, of course not. The best answer here is an accomplishment statement. Right out of the gate, maximize your time in the interview and match who you are to who they are looking for. And if they want something more personal, they're going to ask for it. Lead with how you fit the role and the organization. And copy this down somewhere. Tell me about yourself is code for tell me how you fit the role and the hiring organization. Now, research and accomplishment statements are key here. Research and accomplishment statements can also be used for questions like, what's your biggest strength? That's actually code for how do you most match this role, this hiring organization? And sometimes the question's more straightforward, right? Why do you want to work here? Again, answer with research and accomplishments. Now, research can also help us with the dreaded dum dum dum. What are your salary requirements? First, before the interview, have an idea of the salary range for that role in your region. The sites I mentioned at the top of the session can help you get there. And like I said before, salary is often dictated by the area of the country that you're in. So once again, sites like Own It Online and Glassdoor can help us get there. Early in the interview process, you'll want to deflect the salary question. I advise that you don't offer specifics on salary yet. It's too early. You haven't proven yourself yet, and there are still too many applicants for the target organization to choose from. The best answer early on in the interview process is a range. Something like, according to my research, this type of role in this area pays somewhere between X and Y. Do you concur? Do you agree? This shows that you've researched and you're putting the ball back in their court. You can also say, I've done my research and the range for this position is right in my zone. Salary isn't a concern at this stage, but I think for us to discuss an exact number, I'd like to know more about the benefits package or who your team will be or the week to week of what it's like to work there. Ideally, you only want to be talking a specific number with the hiring manager in the final stages of the interview, because by that point, they've heard your accomplishment statements and you're competing with far less applicants. I advise that you include these as part of your research. They're called salary deflection statements, and you can Google just that, salary deflection statements. They're fantastic, and I think will really put your mind at ease in anticipation of this question during a job interview. Next, there's what's your area of improvement, a challenge, your greatest weakness, and it's all the same stuff. They may ask you any of those. Now, the answer here should never be something directly related to the position. Cite something indirectly related to the position or something that you're working on. So, as an example, for a customer service role, you'd never say, I just don't like people. Of course not, right? Because that's directly related to a customer service position. But you could say that you're taking a class in statistics because if you can identify subsets of the population that target organization was not serving, that can be communicated to managers to increase outreach into that subset. Or maybe you're applying to, say, an IT position. You can talk about pursuing a certification, maybe in cybersecurity. So, a weakness, an area of improvement. Talk about an area of improvement when it comes to a weakness or a challenge. Talk about something indirectly related to the position or something you're working on that would accentuate your fit in the role. Now, if the interviewer asks a question that you can't think of an answer to, you can respond with, can we get back to that question? That's going to give you some time to mull it over. Copy the question down. Try to answer it before the interview is through. Now, short of that, state that you'll include that answer in your thank you email after the interview if you can't answer it within the interview. Now, should you expect more questions? Absolutely. Research those sites and your target industry to be as prepared as possible. Remember, research and accomplishment statements. Next up, your questions. Yeah, be sure to have questions of your own because a lack of questions shows disinterest and you want to show that you're interested. So have questions. This interview is a two-way street. Make sure that they meet your standards. Make sure there will be mutual value with this hire. Take notes too, so you can consider their answers later on. So here are some questions that you can ask the interviewer. What led you to this position? In the case of a recruiter or an interviewer for the position, well, first for the recruiter, if in the case of a recruiter, ask why they're working for that particular client. And the interviewer, ask why, if they're with the organization, ask why they're with that organization. Either way, it's going to inform what type of background the organization values, probably how long that person has been there, and if they work their way up. You're talking to someone who was hired, right? If there's commonality there, you won't only have rapport, but you're showing them that you are a match. Now, on the other hand, their answers to this question can also show that this organization is not the right fit for you. Either way, this question will lead you closer to knowing whether or not the organization is a match for you. Next, where do you see this organization in 5 years? Asking the interviewer where they see the organization in the future is going to show how forward thinking they are, how they see their future. This is also serving as a great springboard for you to talk about how you're envisioning your first 90 days there. And if you get this question, it's not enough for you to say, well, here at this organization. Now, get into some detail about how your forward trajectory matches the target organization's future, things that you see yourself doing there once you're hired. Again, you have to research for that match. Can you tell me about a recent issue that your organization faced and how it was rectified? Asking about a recent issue and how they resolved it is going to help inform you how valued teamwork is there. Now, pay attention to how this question is answered. Maybe this department is siloed. Maybe there's friction with another department or another colleague. Or maybe they're collaborative and truly all hands on deck. What they say is important, but how they say it is important to consider as well. Now, should you have other questions prepared? Definitely. Scour the organization's website, Google the organization, do some soul searching, and have a few questions for each person that you interview with. Also, in later rounds of interviews, feel free to ask follow-up questions of what was discussed in the earlier rounds. Also, during the interview, note the interesting points that are made by the interviewers. Get their contact information. So I mentioned earlier to jot down their answers to your questions. The same goes for any intriguing points the interviewers make, because these points will be used in your thank you emails later on. Now, when the interview wraps up, get a business card from everyone you interviewed with. If it's virtual, ask for their email addresses. This is so you can send out your thank you emails. Some people swear by thank you letters, physical letters, but I'd sooner not run the risk of that letter getting lost in the mail. I think this is why email is the choice here. And here's a cool tip. If you interview in person, get a business card from the person at the front desk and thank them for their time. It's a little gesture that goes a really long way. All right, here we go with part 3 after the interview. Take a long, hard look at these 2 words. They are among the most important during the interview process. The interview isn't over when you hang up the phone or end the virtual appointment or walk out of the office. Within 24 business hours, send thank you emails to each person you interacted with and include anything interesting that particular interviewer said, because it shows that you were actively listening. And remember, if the interview was on site, thank that front desk person. I mean, really, the whole time you were interacting with the target organization was an interview. So you want to justify the fact that everyone took time out of their workday to meet with you and consider you for the team. All right, before we wrap here, I have a few more final points to consider. First off, during the interview, never badmouth a prior organization. If you do, the interviewers may wonder if you'll badmouth them if they hire you and you ultimately leave their organization. Next, never shortchange your abilities. Believe you have what it takes to pick up adaptive skills. Next, Always be open to new ideas and change. It's never, I think I could do that. Instead, it's, yeah, I want to give that a shot. Keep thinking, can I work here with these people? If hired, you'll be working with them 7 to 8 hours a day, a schedule that's going to rival seeing your own family. Pay attention to your gut. Are they your people? Next, if direct eye contact makes you nervous, look above the eyes. If it's on a virtual interview, look around the ocular, not directly into the ocular. On the other hand, if you feel like you're talking too fast, science out there proves that making direct eye contact will slow down your rate of speech. Listen to the needs of the organization that bubble up during the interview, or what you discovered in your research of the organization. I mean, they might not know they have that need, a need that you can serve. And last, of course, always be positive. I mean, you never know. If this position doesn't work out, maybe you'll be referred to one that is more of a match. Please join us for future sessions. You can go to masshiremncareers.com/events. Once there, you can access our calendar of virtual workshops. And if you need assistance, we provide instructions for you as well. And on behalf of all of us here at Mass Hire Metro North, thank you very much for watching. You can see more at our website, lower right-hand bottom of your screen, www.masshiremncareers.com. Our resource page has links to some great sites out there. It also links to our YouTube channel, which has our pre-recorded job search and technology webinars, including a pre-recorded version of this session, along with the basics of phone and virtual interviewing that I spoke of earlier. On screen, you can see a shot taken from the contact page of our website. Contact us for further assistance. Until then, I'm going to wish you maximum luck on your job search. And thanks for watching.